Hello, everybody. I hope you're having a nice night. I'm going to define the concepts that the teacher asked us to define, and I'm going to start talking about mediation. Mediation is the use of concrete tools that allows us to develop an action more efficiently. It means that when we use concrete elements, we can develop or we are able to fulfill actions in probably in a more appropriate way. When we talk about mediation, there are two types of mediation: self regulation and concept based regulation. Self regulation is the capacity to regulate and evaluate self performance, and it allows learners to accomplish activities with minimal guidance or support from others, or even without support at all. When we talk about concept based regulation, is the acceptance of concepts to make meaning of the word according to culture. So, in my personal opinion, one of the main difference between self-regulation and concept-based regulation is that self-regulation goes or it covers like a process that each individual tries to go through, where there are not external, probably external mediators or external guidance from others. But concept-based regulation goes probably with the help of mediators as teachers or when we start the process of going to school. The second concept is a zone of proximal development, and as taking into account the readings and what I also researched about it, this zone is a gap between what a learner is able to do without help and what he has not mastered yet but is able to learn with instruction and with help of any other mediator. It helps students achieve through collaborative mediation what they cannot do by themselves. So I think it's a state where the balance of not knowing something and starting the process of knowing it are combined. The third concept is concept based instruction, and it is a process in which relevant features of the sacred language are explained explicitly. This process follows five stages, which are explanation, materialization, communication, verbalization, and internalization. The fourth concept, and this is one of the most complex one to define, probably we have heard about the concept of ecology before, and thanks to the task we have now like an overall view of what ecology is. But when we talk about ecology of language, it is the science that studies the interaction between language and its environment, being this understood as the society that uses it, right? So ecology of language is also determined by the people who learned and use language. It moves from the syntactic approaches and syntactic and semantic approaches to studying the conditions that make language useful. And there are 10 characteristics of ecology of language. The first one is relations. Language learning is defined as a relationship between learners and the environment. Language is seen as relations between learners' attributes and the environment's attributes, which makes the development of a given activity possible. Here with interact with relationships, I think that the main concept is interaction between learners and the environment. Context. It is not only what is around language, but it's also what defines language. Patterns and systems. Language uses predetermined and predictable patterns and systems, and these are the two concepts that ecology of language describes as one of the main characteristics of language, and they make the difference among these concepts with the concept of rules and structures. And they said that language uses patterns and systems instead of rules and structures. The fourth concept is emergence. Ecology of language conceives language as an emerging system that develops a higher order system from combining simple elements. For me, emerging system is that there are things going on and things that appear in the language process. Taking this into account, we also need to talk about the characteristics of quality and value. Quality being a notion that differs from standards. They talk about how standards and quality should be combined. Like, it's not just talking about standardized education or standards that students need to achieve, but it's quality, like how good everything is. I know that good is not probably the appropriate adjective, but the idea of this characteristic is that education, or education in general, but education and involving language should have a balance between quality and standards because they are complementary. Value is the characteristic that sees value as the cause and consequence of all actions that take place in the learning process. Critical ecology of language is constantly evaluating what is happening, what is thought, and what should be happening. So critical basically is similar to the concept that we've known, and it's just questioning, right? But not just questioning, but it's with the intention of taking part of something, or like doing something about it. Variability. Ecology of language takes into account different differences among learners and among teachers too. The idea of taking these differences into account is to give learners, students, relevant opportunities to learn, and it also focuses on differences that can be found among schools, countries, and the system in general. So basically, variabilities, the consciousness about differences, not only from the learner's perspective, but also from the system's perspective. Diversity, it is the importance given to different types of learners and teachers in a learning environment. This characteristic focuses on how heterogeneous society is and the different kinds of people that live in it. So it's just taking into account how different we are and what those differences or how those differences impact on the process, on the learning process. And activity, I think that is one of the most complex concepts to define, but I'm going to try it. It is the action that lets learners become autonomous and able to define meaning of their acts, taking into consideration the social context, right? For example, for instance, there was an example in the test where kids from different generations were asked to describe their houses without mentioning the color white. And then when we analyzed the first kid, who's the little one, he had problems. He couldn't do it, even though he had something like physically that he could use, like something like a car where there were different colors with exception of the white color. He couldn't do it. But then the next kid, with this help, with guidance and instruction, he was kind of able to do it. And then with adults, there is not a tool needed to accomplish this task, right? And the last concept is sociocultural, and I think it is what defines us as individuals. It is related to the influence society can have on the learning process, and cultural factors, individual differences, and social implications played a relevant role in the development of our abilities.